Okay, so let's dive in. An agenda for the 1 hour that we have you. Who we are, we'll talk through that. At Cloudera, we've got a very specific way that we attack problems. And you can see here is that's think big, start smart, and iterate often. We'll talk through kind of what the business problem was that we were facing and our vision for the solution. We'll talk through starting smart, which is identifying and leveraging a differentiated set of data, and iterate often, so improving as we learn. So we'll talk through that. And then the really cool stuff is what's next and thinking bigger. So intros, this is me. I am a self-proclaimed data nerd by day, and I am a homesteader and supermom by night. We do have orchard, grow as much of our own food as possible, bees, and I do have animals. Those animals up there are named Remy and Jade. That's my 3-year-old and 1-year-old. And one of my goals in life is not necessarily to be the smartest person in the room, because that's an impossible feat, but to always surround myself by super smart people, which is why I dragged this guy along.
Thanks. I've been with Cloudera for 3 years. My name is Michael Stevenson. I came from a background in data warehousing and business intelligence through the years working in different verticals, and ultimately became a Cloudera customer after I was in a manufacturing company at the time. Anyway, we were a customer. I came over to Cloudera, and it's been incredible since. I'm not quite as well-rounded as Stephanie or eclectic in my interests, so I'm just a data nerd pretty much day and night, but at least at night, you can see, so I saw the guy with the bells hat. He'll probably appreciate at least one of these. There's a venerable explosion of data, as you know, throughout our normal everyday lives. So just a sampling of the apps that I think are going to create some really cool opportunities going forward, and I got a few of my own pet projects with these things. Untapped to help me find new beers to drink, Lose It to help me lose the weight I gained drinking all the new beers, and so forth. But it's just incredible, and the exciting times that we're living in, and it's cool when your professional life and your personal lives can kind of share. All right, moving on. So thinking big. As I mentioned, we always want to look for the big problems, and in this case, our big problem was that sales truly lacked integrated information to make true educated business decisions. So they came to us in marketing and said, guys, I've got 8,000 accounts I need to focus on. Who the hell do I focus on first, and with what message? So that's a big problem to face. And as a marketer and as a data-driven marketer, your brain starts to kind of go everywhere. Actually, let me first ask, those of you in the room, how many of you are business, sales, marketing practitioners? Raise your hands. How many of you are truly more on the technical side, so more data engineering, data warehousing type of stuff? It's about 50-50, I would say, so good mix. Okay, cool. Hopefully we make both sets of you happy in this talk. But again, as a data-driven marketer, one of the things that we truly focus in on is using and leveraging the data that we have or that we can acquire to make those business decisions. Our brains started to kind of go everywhere. So we had to really truly find out and figure out what our goal was, or our solution. So the solution that we came up with was to create what we call a sales recommendation engine. This is what we wanted. We wanted the Porsche, right? We wanted the most powerful engine for sales that we could possibly find. So to get there, though, again, the next step is we had to start smart and identify that differentiated set of data to really, truly power that engine. We needed gas to put in it. So after a little bit of hunting and searching, we identified something called intent data. Is anyone familiar with intent data and what this is and what you can find out of it? Yes, raise your hand. I want to know how deep I need to go into this explanation. Okay, cool. Most of you don't know what intent data is. So what intent data is essentially knowledge of what various accounts are doing research on out on the internet. Bambara is the company and the partner that we use to source this data for us. And essentially, what we're able to see and glean out of this is
okay, we know we want to target and focus on, say, Bank of America or Prudential. What are these companies researching out on the internet? And what we want to see is not necessarily the specific websites that they're hitting, but the general topic areas of interest. And so those are things like data science, data engineering, data warehousing, Hadoop. Those are the things we care about at Cloudera. Machine learning, analytics, that sort of stuff. So what Bambara then provides is they provide us with this data so that we're able to see Bank of America is out on the internet doing research on data science and engineering, okay? So we got our hands on the data. I'm calling this V0. It's the Excel spreadsheet of this data. We have over 450 topics that we care about, topics being those data science, data engineering, et cetera. And we have, again, at the time, it was over 8,000 accounts that we cared about. So this is how we got it. And we got this data every week. And the size of this Excel spreadsheet was 50 to 60 gigabytes every week. So you can't do anything with that. Right? So I'm calling it the horse and buggy of our engine. It's really not an engine at all. So what did we do? For a period of time, believe it or not, we actually got our hands on this data when I was in field marketing. So I wasn't even in the role that I'm in today. But I saw the value in the data. So what I started to do was take this crazy spreadsheet and do all sorts of fun VLOOKUPs and mapping things to this so that I can try to bring it to my sales team and say, hey guys, look at how awesome this is. This is really cool. This is kind of a life changer. And I would manually map this data to our Salesforce data every week to try to get it in front of them. And that was awful. And that was not fun. And that was not scalable. And that was not really what we should be doing. Giving this to a salesperson, they're not going to give a shit about this. Like, for real, they don't know. They have to figure out which of these are their accounts and that sort of stuff. It's just way too much for them to sift through. So we, again, had to iterate. And this is kind of where the magic comes in. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to my super smart colleague onto how we did this.
So if you'll look closely, that's an actual picture of Stephanie lugging around the Excel spreadsheets that was so large. No, but metaphorically, what we're trying to convey here is Excel is not the right tool for this kind of heavy lifting. There was far more that we wanted to do with it than was practical. And to be clear, it wasn't really a 50 gig spreadsheet. There was 50 gigs worth of data. You can't load 50 gigs in Excel and expect it to even behave at all. But the point is, it was really large, and we saw the value. Like Stephanie, through her analysis, manually saw tremendous value, but we knew that we needed a smarter way of dealing with this data. So let me talk about some of the specific challenges. First of all, it's not natively integrated with any of our data systems. So I don't know if you saw on the screen, but you're looking probably at the columns and seeing if your own company was up there. But generally speaking, it's just a disparate set of data. It's off on its own. It's a silo. And we didn't have really any way, short of a clunky VLOOKUP in Excel, to try to integrate it with the masses of enterprise data that we have available to us already internally that I'll talk about in a minute. The second thing is that the flat file, because coming in every week, we were getting new drops every week. It made temporal analysis very difficult. I mean, the file itself is huge, but then imagine trying to do period over period analysis or see trends across time. Really difficult to do with that volume of data in basic tooling. It was also, when we began to, I'm going to talk a little, jumping ahead a little bit in the lifetime. So I can't remember, Bambara are the folks we get this data from. They're seated down here, and they're also super smart people. Well, there were some challenges even with the drop. So we found initially it was somewhat unpredictable as to when it was going to drop for various reasons. And we can work around that, but when you're manually dealing with that, that's a real hassle. Stephanie's going to set an alarm on her phone every hour and go, did it drop yet? Did it drop yet? That's not practical either. So we wanted a way to automate that. And finally, just the manual manipulation of it was really painful and time intensive, as we've kind of expressed. So as we were thinking about a solution and a way to integrate this and be smarter with how we could use this data, there were a few solution goals that we had. I'm about to show you the implementation on the next slide, at least conceptual implementation. But I wanted to talk about the goals that we had. So first and foremost, it was really key that we had this data integrated with as much of our other enterprise data as possible. I mean, you guys who work in the data management space, you understand that so much value in analytics comes from blending data sources. That's where all the magic happens. You can get independent sets of data, and they're cool and useful, but until you marry them up with all the other stuff you have going on, you're not going to get the full value potential that happens to be there. So we knew we really wanted to integrate it all. We also knew we wanted to store all history. Well, you can do the basic math. 50 gigs a week over time, that grows pretty quickly. We are a big data company, so we're not scared of the data volumes, but we knew we had to do something different with it, and we wanted to store it forever. Also led to us needing to store it efficiently. That much data, we need to be smart about what we're doing with it, so we're not just burning disks and processing. And then finally, we wanted to automate the entire thing. We don't want anybody in marketing to have to touch anything any week. They should just be able to open up Tableau and see their visualization. Okay, let's take the next kick. This is kind of a conceptual overview of our architecture. I'm going to talk about a few details here. I won't go super deep, but we do have, I don't remember if we mentioned, we're going to do questions at the end. We're trying to leave 15 minutes for that, or come up after. We'll be glad to talk at all about any of the details of internal. So first of all, I just want to talk about EDH. What is EDH? Do we have any Cloudera customers here now? Any Cloudera customers? Okay. EDH is kind of the Cadillac of Cloudera offerings. Cloudera is built on open source software. We stitched together a collection of open source projects. Started with Hadoop, but now it includes a whole variety of things that enable us to have, it's basically a big data processing platform. I'm not trying to sell it, I'm trying to describe the reason that we chose. I mean, it is our own product, so of course we use it internally, but the capabilities that we get from this enable us to do some really cool things. So EDH stands for Enterprise Data Hub, and that's kind of what we call it internally. You'll see that around, and Stephanie will say it rolling off her tongue. So we use the EDH for a lot of things. The capabilities there are cool for us because once the data is inside, we can do SQL workloads on it, we can do machine learning workloads on it with Python or whatever, standard kind of libraries. We can also do machine learning with Spark on it. There's also APIs to hit it with a whole variety of things. Search is integrated. Like, there's some real advantages to doing this over a traditional relational database. So that's kind of sets the stage. But let me talk about some specifics of the data engineering pipeline. How many of you guys are data engineers, actually deal with ingest pipelines and such? Okay. Perhaps this won't be nearly as interesting as I'd hoped then. But on the left-hand side, that's where we're getting the data in this portion of the talk. Those are the two primary sources that we started with. We're continuing to iterate. We'll talk about some other sources later, but the primary ones initially, Salesforce.com data that we bring in multiple times per day. Every hour we get new dumps out of Salesforce and we integrate it in. We've been doing that for a while. All the Bambara data is represented there in orange. We have Bambara data. There's really two sources of this stuff, two spigots, if you will. One is stuff that companies are doing not on our website, and the other is stuff that companies are doing on our website. And they're both useful in different ways that Stephanie will show. So we bring that stuff in. As I mentioned about the automation, we have an always-on pipeline, and it's just sitting there running. And it just looks for files. And when the guys at Bambara drop onto the secure FTP site, we grab it. It's a big compressed file that when we first get it in our pipeline, we bring it in, and a couple of key elements that I think are important. It's just kind of our own biases that we think if you're doing good data management, you'll do some of these things. The first is you'll see immediately as soon as it comes in, we store it in raw form. Like, we keep full fidelity native source always. Even if we can't really work with it in that way, but you never know when you're going to have to replay something. And so it's important for us to keep the full fidelity source. But then we can't just work on it in that way. So we continue on with our pipeline, and we apply a lot of structure. I mean, the data is semi-structured anyway. It comes in tabular format, but it's not self-describing in any way. It's not like a relational table. So through our daily processing, we bring it in, dump the raw, and then apply. We use two different file formats. This may be way in geek territory right now.
That's fine. Keep going.
I'll mention it.
Geek territory is good.
One of these pipelines, we convert to Avro. We apply an Avro schema on the way in, and we store it that way, and then lay tables on top of that. And in the other case, we use Parquet. And that really, if we were going to rewrite it, which we will as we evolve, we'll just go to all Parquet. Avro had some advantages at the time, but right now we're just going to stay with Parquet. And we store it on a daily basis. That's where the full history part of this comes into play. We lay tables on top. Brief tech nugget. One of the advantages to using a system like Hadoop that's cool is that we just store the data at a file level. It's not like an Oracle database or a SQL Server where you tell the database engine, here, store this, and that's kind of black box. We can manipulate it at the file level and then lay different sorts of table abstractions on top of it. So we can have multiple things on top of these files behaving in different ways, which is useful to us. The Salesforce stuff is going through, and then that optimization layer, that's like a big hand wave, optimizations. But we do a lot of lifting in there, and specifically what I wanted to talk about was the joining of the data. So this is kind of a hard problem. You remember seeing the data on the screenshot earlier of the Excel spreadsheet, really the lowest level of grain that we have is the domain. So we know that people at this particular domain are surging on these topics. So in our Salesforce data, of course, we're dealing with individual accounts, and we do a pretty decent job at keeping up with domains, but that's not always a one-to-one mapping. In fact, it's hardly ever a one-to-one mapping. A lot of times, there are multiple domains associated with a single company, and we need to lump those. So it's that kind of stuff that's happening in the optimizations. The other thing that's happening there that we really like a lot is for the domain mapping, but also for topic roll-ups, marketing can control that stuff on their own. So as you imagine, new topics come into play every week, new topics fall away. And how many were there you said, Steph?
450?
Yeah, 450. Well, we need some way to aggregate those and lump them together, but marketing is continually to rethink how they do that. So we give them the ability through control tables in this optimization layer to say, we don't want to look at it this way anymore, we're going to look at it like this. They don't have to touch the underlying data, and everything just flows through. And then the final piece of the puzzle, the big green arrow that moves to Tableau, we do use Tableau Server in this instance, and that's all via Impala. Impala is our SQL on Hadoop engine that we use. It's very fast for us. We structure tables on the right-hand side that are purpose-built for this use case so that it performs really well, and then Tableau gets the updates. Let's see, anything else?
No, I just want to translate everything you said to the people that aren't technical, and you got lost. Essentially, what we've done here is you can do a lot of these types of data joins in Tableau if you want to. The problem is the way that it was set up, it wasn't perfect for our needs. So in a really fancy way, we did it way at the back end at our EDH level.
And even to expand, like in my opinion, from a data engineering perspective, that's kind of a best practice anyway. There's a lot of stuff we can do in Tableau, and we do a lot of things in Tableau. The problem is then all that logic is buried in Tableau. And this is a rich enterprise database, right? And we have all kinds of systems that hit it. We have people that use Excel and hook directly to it. We have people that write their own raw SQL. We got data scientists that are running via Spark or Python directly against it. If we bury all that kind of stuff in Tableau, we can't get as much reuse out of it. So we like to, generally speaking, we do as much as we can in the database side, and then just put kind of the final product into Tableau.
Okay, so this is our first version. Does anybody know what this is? This is an image of the Model T engine. This is our version that I'm calling the Model T. So V1 of our dashboard. So this is view 1 of V1. What this shows you is the accounts and their surge topics, the way this is used. So a sales rep will come into this, and if you look on the right-hand side, it's really hard to see this little dot, but if you look all the way on the right-hand side, we have an array of filters. All of these filters are essentially the Salesforce types of data. So the sales reps are able to look at this and slice and dice it as they see the world. So we were serving them up the Bambara data, leveraging all of the ways that they look at the world based on the Salesforce information, really truly bringing us together. If a sales rep wants to come in and look at this, let's say on a daily basis or a weekly basis, he could filter on his own name. Same thing with the TVP. Say there's a theater vice president that wants to know across the board what are people looking at or surging on. They can even filter on their own. This isn't just useful for sales, it's also useful for field marketing and account-based marketers as well, because they'll go into this and collaborate with their sales reps. So a few of the things I want to highlight and how this really works is this line here. Basically, we say anything that's above this line is the stuff you should care about. These are the companies that are surging on various topics at a high enough clip level that it's important. Anything below the line is there. It's useful information for you from time to time. But if you're trying to figure out where you want to focus, what message to what accounts, look at that stuff that's above the line. So if I'm a sales rep, I'll walk into this, I'll filter it based on my name, and then I know, let's say this account is probably one of the accounts that I want to really hone in on and focus on for this week. So maybe this account, any of these top accounts up here. It's interactive in the sense that the sales rep can go in, click on, let's say, that specific bubble, and once they click on that bubble, down below here, it hones in and shows you exactly what those topic areas are that that particular account is surging on or is researching out there on the internet. As Michael mentioned, we have groupings as well. So, for example, things like encryption, security forensics, security analytics, these are all general broad topics that all relate to one thing, and that's cybersecurity. So what we've done is we've built out these tables that bucket these general topics into several core messages that we care about in marketing. And so what the sales rep is also able to do is pop in and over here on the right-hand side, filter on those bucket topic areas if they want to. But even better than that, we're also looking at our competitors' data. So we know, for example, that one of our core accounts maybe is researching one of our competitors. Of course, those are things that we want to know. So if a rep might be a little bit threatened and want to figure out who he needs to go after to focus on, blocking and making sure that his target accounts are not looking at some of our biggest competitors, he'll go in and he will go and filter on, hey, competitors as well. So this is view 1. And then just a bit more of a simplistic view is view 2. Just a simple table, color-coded. So again, same type of information in a little bit of a different format. Different people learn differently. And so this is just another way that we visualize it. Both of these dashboards, after we launched it formally to the sales team, quickly became our #1 used dashboards at the company, and they still are today. This SDR organization and the sales organization go into this every week to plan out what they're going to do for that week, who they're going to focus on, and what messages they're going to hone in on for those folks. Okay? So V2. Does anybody know what kind of engine this one is? It's a 1952 Chevy Belair engine, so a little bit more advanced than the Model T, but still we're not quite there yet. So what Michael talked about before was the snapshots, the surging data over time. So what we've done here is each week, as Michael said, we've captured and kept this data. The way a sales rep, the request for this actually came out of sales directly. One of the SDRs wanted a little bit more insight onto what was happening. Say Bank of America is surging on data warehousing, then looking at data analytics, then looking at something else, and then maybe they go back to data warehousing again. It kind of tells a story, right? Looking at those topics and the flow of how they kind of pop up and jump down and up and down, you can kind of start to gauge what your target accounts care about at a collective level over time. So what you're looking at here is up at the top, you'll see the dates. So this is July 22nd, 15, 8, yada, yada, yada. And you can see, say a rep filtered this on a specific account. I just want to look at Bank of America. If I hover over any one of these little boxes, it will highlight and show you up and down how the specific topic that I'm highlighted on has either gained interest or dropped in interest on that particular account on the given week. You can back this up. I mean, we've been keeping this data for 18 months. So we can back this up and actually view and see that story over time. Beyond that, we haven't done any crazy machine learning against this, but again, another version that sales has specifically requested and has found insanely helpful. This is V3, the butterfly chart. So Michael talked about two sets of data, not just the external surging data, so what our focus accounts are looking at externally, but also what they're looking at on our website. So Bambara has what we call a visitor insights tag. We added their tags to all of our websites. So what happens is we're able to see here, side by side, what a specific company is looking at externally off of our website, as well as internally on our website, based on topic area. If I tell a sales rep, hey, Tableau software is looking at data analytics, off of our website, well, are they looking at data analytics on our website too? Maybe they're hitting 5 different pages on our website. But what do all of those 5 different pages amount to? There's a lot of topics on our website. So this really narrows down the focus and hones in and says to them, yes, Tableau is looking at data analytics off of our website as well as on our website. Now, this is a dashboard that has not been formally rolled out to sales quite yet. They've seen it. They find it helpful. I think the key in this dashboard is not where it's the same, where you can see there's been a ton of hits and there's a high surge score here, but it's rather, where are the holes? So if Tableau software is looking at data analytics off of our website, well, they better be looking at data analytics on our website as well. And if they're not, then I know I need to hone in and make sure I'm pushing that message in front of them as well. Again, another problem with this dashboard right now, I'm a very real person, I'm not going to tell you everything is perfect because it's not, is this is kind of like looking at apples to oranges. These are page hits, and this is surge score. So you're not looking at exactly the same thing. One side, again, is page hits. So this is on our website how many page hits we've had, and then this is the external searching data off of our website. So again, we're working through this a little bit more, but iterate often, right? We just need to get the minimum viable product out the door in order to put it in the hands of the people that are going to use it. So this is the top level is one part of the view. The lower section is if you click on any of these blue bars, we've utilized the viz and viz so that you can actually hone in and see exactly what topics those accounts are surging on or looking at. Okay. So then the next one, this is V4. This is our sales recommendation that I'm actually really excited about because this is what really aligned sales and marketing. In marketing at Cloudera, we care about 3 core things: machine learning, analytics, and cloud. We've done a lot of work around all 3 of these core categories. Lots of messaging documents, lots of drip emails have been put together, lots of webinars, and all of that sort of wonderful fun stuff, all the demand generation things that we've got going on. The problem that we were seeing, though, is that, hey, the sales team doesn't really 100% know what core messages we're pushing out to their target accounts. Marketing is off doing their thing, sales is off doing their thing. Well, this gives you the opportunity for both of the two to align to say, okay, we're going to serve these messages to these specific accounts. So what this dashboard shows, again, is this is really targeted for new logo accounts, not necessarily existing accounts. This would be new accounts. That's what this dashboard was designed for. Same set of filters across the board on the right-hand side so that the sales rep can filter on how they see the world, and then aligns them and says, hey, if you have these accounts, this month you want to serve them this drip campaign, sales development representative. And again, those campaigns are already built out. They go through, they push it into the system, click, play, it goes. The other super cool thing that we're running off of this is always on advertising. So I'm going to pop over to this slide. So if you're questioning the data in any capacity, hopefully this wipes that away. So we've seen some super crazy, awesome results on the always-on advertising that we've been serving based on this data set. So what happens is the sales recommendation engine that I showed you, we're serving ads to those accounts based on those topic areas that we've told sales. Okay? And that's dynamic, and it changes. It changes week over week or month over month, depending on how we've set it up, so that the new messages are pushed out to those accounts, and they change week over week. And what we've seen by doing that is if we've got, here are our numbers. Okay, benchmark click-through rates are 0.06% to 0.1%, and we're seeing click-through rates of 0.14%. Benchmark click-to-land rates are 50 to 60%, and we're seeing 91% click-to-land rates by utilizing this and aligning to sales as tightly as we are. And then we've also decreased our cost per click by 16%, decreased our cost per landing by 42%, and decreased our cost per acquisition by 32%. So again, tightly honing in on those core messages, aligning super tightly to sales, and serving those dynamic ads based on all of that Bambara data has shown us these kind of crazy awesome results. So that's kind of where we are, what we've done with Tableau. But the really cool stuff is yet to come, and that's what I'll hand it back over to Michael to talk about.
Okay, what's next? Thinking bigger. This is all what we're going to talk about. We're kind of in the V0 phase of the next stuff. It's all working, what we're about to talk about, but we're continuing to iterate. We have a couple of the guys on my team, data scientists in the UK, are continuing to evolve what I'm about to show you. Let's go to the next slide. Why did you just hand it to me? Okay, I'll just take it. Okay, so this is going to sound a little harsh. There's a lot of customers that we don't want. Because they're expensive, they're a pain in the butt, they don't give us that much money. It's just a real, and if you guys are in business, you probably know what I'm talking about. Well, in our space of selling open source software, first of all, it's really hard. Like, our platform is hard and complicated, not because we did a bad job with it, but because the nature of stitching together 30 open source projects into something that looks like a cohesive whole is a hard proposition. And even as good as our management tooling is, it's still difficult to run it. And you still got to have a bunch of geeks on hand who understand things and know how to fix problems and know how to debug. I mean, you're talking about a massive, for example, in our cluster that we're running, and we're small in terms of our general customer base, we have 60 servers that operate as one, 60 nodes in our cluster. It's, we have a capacity of 900 terabytes, utilizing about 700 terabytes right now. Well, imagine trying to maintain a system of that scale. So it's hard, and because it's hard, it's a fairly decent size investment. Forget about the software cost. Even if you're trying to be cheap and run it all on your own on open source, you still have significant infrastructure investment to get into a game like this. So anyway, it turns out that we looked at it, and our support, Angus, who leads our support organization, was actually, his folks were like, something's up here, man. We spend most of our time on the phone with the customers that barely pay us anything. And for our business model, the people buy us for our support because we got the best support in the business. And when you're running open source software, that's really what you want, is the support. So our support guys, who are super smart guys who get paid a lot of money, were burning their whole day talking to customers that pay us barely anything. And it was a real problem. So we started to identify, I forgot, I got derailed. I'm trying to tie this picture into everything that I'm saying right now. Anyone see the gap, see the bridge? Okay, here's what we're trying to say. The sales recommendation engine that Stephanie has been talking about has now getting us to the point to where we have a really good sense of what to say to which customers, right? At what time. Like, we know when we're going in to talk to a given customer what's appropriate for us to say to them. What we don't know is, based on that, well, what customers ought we be talking to anyway, of all the potential companies out there? So we have this great engine. I'm going to stretch the metaphor a little. We have this great car now with this great engine, but we got to know where to drive. Where are we going to drive this thing? And so that leads us to the next evolution, which is picking better customers via machine learning. I do want to emphasize again, this is one of the real benefits of building your stuff on a kind of a general purpose data processing platform, as opposed to just a traditional tech database or something like that. Because now, you see, we're still in the EDH, right? Same underlying platform, same data sets already integrated. We're not having to do massive extracts. It's all there, and we're just going to run machine learning models. I'm going to talk about some of these details. This is intentionally meant to be more of a conceptual slide. If you have detailed questions about the models themselves, we could talk after with people on my team. I'm sure would be glad to talk to you. But generally speaking, if you start on the left-hand side, you'll see there's a lot of data sources that we're rolling in now that we haven't yet talked about. Of course, we have Salesforce and Bambara. That's the foundation for everything we've done so far. The third one down is our own data. So if you're a Cloudera customer, and I know we had a few in here, one of the options that you can do if you're really engaged with our support is to send in what are called diagnostic bundles. And it's basically a big, disgusting-looking tarball of information about your cluster. What's going on with it physically? What's all the instrumentation that's in the software gets dumped into that thing, and you send it to our support guys, and they're kings at parsing through that and figuring out what your problems are. We even do it proactively. So if you you send this data to us, we proactively help you identify problems before you know you have a problem. It's a really effective model for us. Well, the point is, back to Start Smart, that's differentiated data. Like, that's cool that we know that about our customers. We know what they're using and how they're using it. So it helps us, and that's useful for our models. OpenAir is our, well, you're probably familiar with some of those. OpenAir we use for tracking professional services engagements, and we have a lot of data about what a given account's doing with our PS team at the time. Again, good inputs to models if we're thinking about our customers and what they're doing. We bring in D&B data and Pivotal IQ for firmographic stuff like industry classification data, revenue data, all of that kind of thing to get kind of an outside perspective on the company. And then finally, LearnDot is our training system, so we know what customers are training and what they're training on and that kind of thing. This is all data that we have at our disposal, so we really wanted to use it and help us identify who the better customers are. So there's three main models that we've focused on so far in this exercise. The first one in pink is which companies have high yield potential. So that sounds quite greedy for us to say, but here's the reality of it. Customers that get the most from our platform, our largest customers, find us invaluable. They get a ton of value out of it because they use it in the way it's designed, and that is across massive amounts of data running mixed workloads, doing machine learning on it, doing data science, doing SQL-based workloads and business intelligence and standard reporting, all that stuff on a single platform. They love us for that. They get a ton of value from it, and as data volumes grow, they can scale it horizontally really easily. You just add new nodes and just scale it, and the linear scale that the software provides, which is a cornerstone of Hadoop to begin with, really gives them great benefit. So what am I talking about here? I keep feeling like I'm selling our platform. I'm really not, but we like it for that reason. Okay, so the thing is, with these companies, when we try to identify which companies have high yield potential, do we have any machine learning engineers or data science guys in here? Statisticians? Okay. So we first wanted to say, let's just get a general look at what our current customer base is as a starting place. So that's the pink one. We're like, which of these have high yield potential? That was just a clustering exercise. Typical kind of clustering. Let's try it, but we went through a bunch of versions to try to find clusters that seemed to make sense, that we could interpret and understand kind of how they were made up. We ended up with about 10 cohorts of customers now. And if you look at these cohorts that came out of this clustering exercise, it's really clear where the good customers are. Like if you're in cohort 3 and 8, I just made that up, it may not be 3 and 8, but if you're in those two cohorts, you're likely a really good customer. So we trained our models on our existing customers, we know which ones are good, and we just threw all this at it, unsupervised clustering model, and said, oh, these clusters are really the ones that we like. We like these kinds of customers. Then we have the foundation to say, here's some new companies. So we're doing fiscal year planning right now for our sales team. Who are we going to focus on this year? This is magic for them, because then we can score all these inbound companies using this model and say, these companies right here we believe have high yield potential. But that's not quite enough, because they might have high yield potential, but they're not interested in us at the time. So we go to the orange one, which is Bambara data saves our butt in that model, because in that case we're saying not only are these high yield potentials, but they happen to be interested right now, and we know that because of this and this and this. So this is a classification exercise in the orange that just says, of these, which ones are likely to buy soon? And then the third kind of filter is in blue, which is probably a basic problem you guys have all dealt with if you're Salesforce users. What's the probability of winning a given opportunity at any given point in time? It turns out, believe it or not all salespeople are created equal when it comes to updating Salesforce and being entirely truthful with their forecasts. So if we can just use real data to say, you know what, I don't care what that guy says, that deal is not going to close. Or vice versa. Usually it's vice versa. Anyway, these are all the models that are in play right now, and we're still iterating and trying to improve this. The end game is that this gets integrated into the dashboards, as well as other dashboards that we're developing, as well as we have dynamic feeds where we're pushing back into Salesforce so that we don't have to manually take the results of these models and then go maintain stuff in Salesforce. We just dump it up there directly.
Okay. All right. In conclusion, so what made this successful? Again, I think fundamentally it was a mindset shift for us on the marketing side, to view the world as the sales team views the world and leverage the platform and the things that they do day to day to allow them to slice and dice the data that we had in order to give it to them. Tips for marketers who want to move in this direction, as I mentioned before, follow the approach. Think big, be bold, find a big question, find something that you really want to do and solve. Shoot high, start smart, find your differentiated set of data. That's going to be really core to what you're doing. Don't go run of the mill. Find something kick-ass. And then iterate often. Make sure you get your minimum viable product out the door first. Get people acclimated to it, looking at it. Even if it's not 100% perfect, it's directionally accurate. You've got to start there. And then just continue to iterate on top of it. And that's it for us. We're open for questions.
Yep.
And Wendy's got T-shirts for questions. So if you raise your hand and answer a question, Wendy's going to come around with a T-shirt. Go ahead, in the back. Why Bambara instead of other companies? So there are a lot of companies out there that are now looking at or utilizing and leveraging intent data. We've looked at their model on the back end, and Tessie is what they call it, the engine in the back, and we agree with it. We like it. It seemed like the most solid, valuable set to leverage once we pulled them on.
Yeah, no, so the question, just to summarize, and they're recording audio, which is why we're doing this. I think you're really getting at, there's kind of this chasm that often exists between IT and the business. And you guys in the business are trying to do some stuff, and IT is not always in full support at the time that you need it. And that happens a lot. And we see that among many customers. So we do have a couple of, if you're going to host it on-premise, you're going to have IT, right? If you're hosting an on-premise cluster like we are with physical hardware, IT is going to be involved for sure. But we have a lot of customers now that are moving to cloud, and we even have our own platform as a service where it's hosted and you don't need a full team of tech staff to do it. So our product is called Altus, and we run on AWS, and we also run on Microsoft Azure, and that's built for exactly as you described. So if you have your data as an analyst, you may be an analyst and you have data in S3, for instance. It's with no effort at all for you to spin up a cluster in AWS that gives you the processing power that you need and the tool set that you need, do your analysis, whatever you're going to do, and then spin it back down, leaving the data in place on S3. Well, it would be tough to run an on-premise solution without IT involvement. I don't think you're going to get by that way entirely, but there's a lot of things you can do. I think we do a pretty decent job internally. Like the stuff I described where we built, like for Steph, like control tables, for instance. Mm-hmm. The ability to, if IT will work with you on being smart about the implementation, you can often get a lot done without having to go knock on their door for every little thing.
Yeah, and the data marts you guys are setting up now too. So that
yeah, we still, even though we're Hadoop, we still kind of fall back to traditional patterns of spitting out data marts that are really dialed to particular departments or users' perspectives, just to make it easy for you to get what you need. We also have partners that help on the ingest side. So like we have a lot of like Trifacta is good at this, Talent is good at this. They give you kind of user interfaces to do a lot of the hard stuff that my own team, we might have to scratch it out by hand with Scala or whatever, and those guys really give you some nice tooling. But I'm sure we have a conversation after if you like about specific problems.
More questions? Go ahead.
I'm mostly interested in your Salesforce. Yeah. Do you push dashboards to Salesforce?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
and we end up using Sparkler. Salesforce doesn't get into codes.
Yeah, we've really made a strong effort, at least on the marketing operations side, to scale back our tech stack. There's way too many technologies out there, and it gets way too messy in directing people in a lot of different areas. So we utilize, again, our EDH at the core of the center of a lot of the pieces or things that we do, and then we force, two main areas. Tableau is one, which the sales team has drank the Kool-Aid. They're in it. They know the web version. They use it. They go in it every day, every week. And then Salesforce is the other thing that they live and breathe in. Those are the two things that we really push them to.
Do you also, I noticed you ingest Salesforce data.
Mm-hmm.
Do you manipulate that data, make it, let's say, consistent, and then ship it back out?
Yeah, so we do a lot of that stuff. He could speak more to the technical side, but yes, so it comes into our EDH, the cleansing, the tagging, and a lot of that stuff, and then it gets spit back out to Salesforce. Oh boy. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, how do you come in sync with business users who say they want to do calculations on Tableau instead of the database, right? How do
Yeah.
you come into terms with IT?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know what you're saying. Yeah, the question was, how do you deal, if you're on the IT side and you really want to kind of build logic in the database so it can be reused, but you have business folks that are doing all the calculations in Tableau. And we see that all the time. And it still happens even in Excel spreadsheets as well. So much stuff gets done in Excel, and it's just a complete black hole. And so that's a tough game. I mean, oftentimes, if you have a good working relationship, a common model is that I've seen very effective is to say, let them use Tableau to work out the calculation, because then they're making progress on learning things and iterating and getting it right. As soon as it's right, let's bring it in. Right? In fact, we've done that recently. I was working on a large exercise last week called our customer journey. It's related to this stuff we're talking about. How do we categorize our customers? And we did a whole lot of work on iterating rapidly in Tableau, doing all the, like with a big disgusting looking SQL statement and a whole bunch of nasty calculations in Tableau to do the work. Then once we got it looking like we wanted, I took all that out of Tableau, built it into the data mart, and then the Tableau just hits a single table. So I think if you have that kind of relationship and you can say, hey, look, we want to help you guys, you work out the logic, but then there will be some real benefits to putting it here. It takes some coming together, that's for sure.
Okay, that side of the room, the gentleman with glasses.
Can you talk a little bit how you generated sales buy-in?
Yeah. So again, they came forward with the problem and the question. How do I solve for this? You guys are telling us way too many messages, right? If you look at our website, we've got solutions and we've got products and we've got da-da-da. There's a million different ways you can look at our product. And they said, okay, guys, this is too much. I need to simplify it. I need to dumb it down. So I think that's the first thing, is they came to us with that question. The second thing is, I was in field marketing at the time that we were getting our hands in this data. And so it was kind of having that additional evangelist down in the field, in the trenches with the guys every day, forcing them to kind of look at it. And then it just kind of, it took over, right? In our SDR organization, we did a really strong ramp up with our sales development representatives to say, hey, guys, this is good data. This will help guide you in the right direction. And they're young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, right? Like, they want to do the right thing, and they really want to get the right message out, and they want to land those meetings, right? At the end of the day, that's kind of what they're getting paid on. So they had something to base what they were doing off of, and having something was way better than nothing. So being able to push that out, I think, was the game changer. Yep. Go ahead, in the back.
How do you do with salesmen that think they're going to close the sale, but then your algorithm says you won't close it, like another time?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so salesmen that might think they're going to close the sale, but then your algorithm says, no, forget about this one, you're going to close it. Is there a clash, like, when you started giving those recommendations?
There's definitely going to be a clash. I mean, that's still quite young right now. We're not currently pushing that back into Salesforce, that part of the prediction. I think once we do, there'll probably be more conflict like that. In reality, though, we're kind of looking at it in aggregate at this point. And so saying not individual, like it's useful to look at each individual opportunity, but more so than that, the model's really useful to say, of the X amount that's in the pipeline, this is how much is going to close this quarter, just in aggregate. And that's useful for our own planning purposes. And then the sales leadership can drill into specific opportunities if they want and work it out. We're expecting there will be a cultural, conflict and certainly a shift, hopefully a positive shift, over time. Because I think a lot of people are not. Well, a lot of times salespeople might sandbag on stuff. They don't want to commit to it until they're absolutely confident. That's a big problem. And hopefully this will kind of raise, like, hey man, look, I know you're sandbagging, but we really believe you're going to have this likelihood of success. And so hopefully they'll be accepting of that.
And I think the other thing is we're humans, we're complex creatures. As much of a data nerd that I am, there are always nuances. We're human. So at the end of the day, we have to just have, I think, our sales team on board to trust the data that we have, but we also need to trust them to make the best decision for the business.
She's had up for a long time down here.
Okay, go ahead.
When you guys kind of give this data back to the sales team, like how do you guys weight it? So it seems like you guys have this more like an account scoring, more of the fit side of things, and then you guys also have the intent data for Bambara. Working with a lot of sales reps, it seems like, because I'm on the marketing side as well, so it seems like it's very difficult for them to ingest both of this data and know how to make the smart decisions. Sometimes you'll see a good fit but a low intent, and sometimes you'll see high intent with low fit. Like, how do you guys try to weigh that? Do you guys give them both to them, or do you guys try to aggregate it into one simple like data point that they can see easily and be like, this is the first account that I should be going after?
Yeah, so today, the Bambara data that we have created, the sales recommendation engine based off of, is the only thing they're looking at. The stuff that Michael presented at the end, which is looking at which customer accounts are the best, it's not in live production yet. It's still a work in progress. Once we get to that point, absolutely, we'll drag that right into the exact same dashboard and the brains behind it, the algorithm. Oh boy, wow, this is great glasses. Yeah, you ma'am.
So do you plan this model to model acquisition or cross-upsell or menu or both, everything?
It would be everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't talk about it in detail. There's actually two separate models kind of buried in one of those bubbles. One is a propensity to expand. So those are where we're looking at existing customers that we believe have a really, like the model believes through history, like this guy's likely going to expand this year. And in our business, those are the best customers. Like expansions are where we grow, and more so than new customers. And then the other half is the potential to buy or propensity to buy, where you're talking about turning prospects into customers.
Okay, more questions? In the back, gentlemen?
So I know you said that sales came to you with the problem and prospect. How easy or hard was it for you and your sales agents to actually self-serve in those type of matters? Because I know we faced a problem a long time where the management is involved with the sales agents who actually are not really keen on opening type of matters or trying to find those prospects.
Yeah.
How easy or hard was it to get their buy-in?
Yeah. We started with our bright-eyed, bushy-tailed sales development representative organization. And it wasn't hard to get them to go in and open it up. Most of them are millennials. They look for technology. They look for things. And so they kind of, by enabling them and having them really lead the charge and pull it up in their weekly meetings with their sales rep, it was very easy to get the sales team on board with looking at it. The SDRs really drove that, as well as field marketing. Ma'am? Mm-hmm.
So you went through several versions
Mm-hmm.
of the dashboards. Did you have any trouble with
Did I have any trouble with adoption? So no, again, because I think the biggest thing was they were asking certain questions, and it was up to us to really find that solution for them. And so having them adopt it was not hard at all, because the questions were stemmed from them asking it.
I think she was. You're also targeting kind of as things evolve. Did people like, hey, I want to hold on to that old one. I don't like the new one. And in fact, they're not. We talk about them being versions. They're more so iterations. So like, some of the early ones that Stephanie showed are still in production and still
Yeah.
highly used. It's not that one is replacing the prior. It's really more of just a broadening of the.
Yeah,
of the
you
dashboard
look at them
landscape.
for different reasons. You're asking different questions against the data. So I don't know if that actually answered your question. Okay. Yeah.
Question on the intent data. How are you isolating the topics that are relevant to you from the domain? Are you starting with terms and also somehow?
So, yeah, so Bambara has a set of 4,000 something terms that they track against. We look at that 4,000 set of terms and we pick which ones we care about. And then we constantly refine as we're changing our product or as the market is changing and that sort of stuff. We go back and refine it again and again and again. It's probably a quarterly activity that we do now, right, Amy? About quarterly? Amy, DG? We go through that about quarterly, right, to update our topics?
Yeah, and we also, when we started it, we looked at historical data. What are our top accounts just generally searching on? And do they align with the messages that we want to serve ads on? So we used a combination of that with the recommendations from the
Any other questions before we get booted here? Yes, go ahead.
With regards to the consumption of the data from Tableau to the optimization layer, is that exposed live or through data extracts?
No, it's live. Well, you're talking about are we doing extracts onto our Tableau server? Oh, well, we have both. So we've got a lot of users that use Tableau Desktop that hit our database directly via JDBC connection to Impala. But then we also schedule refreshes on the Tableau server of a lot of these so that they're just there and waiting. And that runs in accordance with whenever the normal pipeline finishes, the Tableau extract is done on the server side.
So all the aggregation is happening when needed in the optimization layer?
I'm not familiar enough with all the dashboards that Stephanie's team has built to say that all the aggregation is buried there, but we generally try to do aggregations in the database itself rather than relying on Tableau. I don't know that that's true in every case. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah?
So, question, how are you going about, I mean, you mentioned that there are potential cases where you have multiple matches for the same customer. How are you going about resolving those, and do you have any challenges?
Yeah, so what usually happens, the way we see it, is we'll have, say, 10 customers with unique domains as far as Salesforce.com goes. Like, we track them and there are all these. But maybe the grain that it comes from Bambara is like the parent. That's a very common thing. And so we say these 10 domains on the Salesforce side actually map to this one on the Bambara side. That's the usual direction that we're. Sorry? No, Bambara does not provide the mapping. We do the mapping our own selves. And that's via the control table. One of the control tables that we have that Steph's team maintains is for that purpose. So they can go in and periodically, because you got to go look at it, right? There's a lot, I don't know what kind of process you guys have to like catch ones that fall through. I'm certain we have domains that are not mapped right now, and it's just an exercise of maintenance to go through and assign them to the right places. Sorry? We have all the DMB data already. We're not super huge fans of DMB. We find that the data quality from those guys is not always the best. I shouldn't say that probably. They're like, no, don't say that. Well, we have DMB data, but it's Pivotal IQ right now is a lot of the stuff we're relying on recently. We still have years worth of DMB that we rely. And to be clear, there's not a better common key than the DUNS. Like we use DUNS numbers for rectifying entities all over the place. I mean, that's a great thing that we do.
Any other questions? Okay, you're free. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.